if you're just tuning in, yes, we are with the very popular Lori Massini. Welcome to The Working Actor. I'm your host, Natasha Gargiulo. And today on Casting Workbook, it's a popular show because if any of you are in this industry, the entertainment industry, right? It's fast-paced, it's exciting, it's demanding, it's unpredictable, and sometimes we need help navigating through it, right? If you're an artist or you're aspiring to be a producer behind the scenes, your objective is to create your own show one day, right? And you want to be the star of that show, or you want to make other people shine. But before you do it, you need to have guidance. And that's why we've asked Lori Massini, who's an entertainment lawyer, the entertainment lawyer in Canada, to know on how to help us get through it and navigate through this world that we so want to be a part of. Welcome to The Working Actor, Lori.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
It's so exciting. I mean, I know on everyone's mind, you get into this industry because at first, whatever it is that attracts you, you want to be talented at it. You want to create really great content. And then eventually you kind of want to lead your own show. You kind of want to be the driver of your own content, right? So before we get into how and why, what made you want to be an entertainment lawyer?
I didn't actually. It's a funny story. I grew up dancing. I was a ballet dancer, and my parents told me, you got to do something that pays the bills. So I reluctantly did an undergrad, and then I was working at Cactus Club and going, okay, I did my undergrad. It didn't get me anything. So went to law school, and I thought I would pursue a career as a writer. I really wanted to write nonfiction, political nonfiction. And then after 7 years of school, I figured, well, I might as well article and get called to the bar just to have that. And I met an amazing person named Kim Roberts, who is a local producer, former entertainment lawyer. And he had the only, at the time, boutique entertainment law firm. And he had an opening, and I thought, okay, well, I'll give this a shot. And almost 15 years later, I'm still doing it. So I fell into it, but I love the arts. And it just was a natural fit.
Yeah, natural fit indeed, because your resume is very impressive. For anyone who's just joining us right now, it's Lori Massini, who's from Vancouver, and we've got a lot of fans and a lot of people who are joining us from Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal.
Yes, hi everyone, I see.
Hi everyone.
That's so cool.
Yeah, Lori, you've been practicing entertainment law, assisting numerous Canadian and American producers and studios with their legal and business affair needs. I'm just going to go through your resume just so that people can be in awe of it as well, okay? You've also represented professional athletes, influencers, which is so big right now, right? The influencer market is just taken over. Musicians, published authors with all their legal and business affair needs. You've acted as a production counsel for original programming for networks such as Nickelodeon, Disney, Netflix, Food Network, and Discovery. And you have extensive experience negotiating contracts for actors, which is amazing if any actors are tuning in right now, directors, producers, and crew, managing employment and labor issues, advising on all corporate legal matters. And now you formerly the Vice President of Legal and Business Affairs for a major film and production studio, but now you have gone on to just be appointed. You're on a new chapter in your life with Thunderbird Entertainment. Tell me about that.
That's great. So I, as of August 1st, I haven't taken the move yet, but I will be joining Thunderbird Entertainment in the role of VP Legal and Business Affairs. So it's an exciting move. I've been in private practice for almost 15 years, and this will be a great new challenge. And joining Thunderbird, who has Atomic Cartoons, so they've got their animation. They have Great Pacific Media, so they have unscripted content, and then of course Thunderbird does a ton of amazing scripted content. So it's exciting to be taking on this new position.
Yeah, it's an exciting position. Why entertainment law? Why not business law or corporate law or legal or divorce, marriage, all that?
God, well, I did kind of fall into it, but I stuck with it because of the clients and the people. And I love content creation, whether it's clients who are influencers or content creators and they're doing Instagram or TikTok, or whether it's producers doing $50 to $100 million films or series that you want to binge watch. I love the industry. I love the content. I'm passionate about creating content. I'm super passionate about creating great Canadian content. I think there's a lot of room for people to make even more amazing Canadian content, and I enjoy watching it. So working on it is fun. Having my fingers in all the different areas is really fun, and producing my own content to the limited capacity that I have has been such an enjoyable experience.
When you think about entertainment lawyers, right? First of all, it's intimidating to even approach an entertainment lawyer. And because when you think of that, and people are like, oh, you need an entertainment lawyer for whatever you're going to do, even
Mhm.
before you start your project, automatically you think dollar signs. And you're like, well, how much
Yeah.
is this going to cost me, right? Because you think there's an expense to it and it's just going to add. To your budget that you probably don't even have.
Mhm.
So, why do we need an entertainment lawyer?
That's a really good question. The answer is on the actor side or on the talent side, you don't always. If you have a good agent, and most of the ones who have been around for a long time are super savvy, they know what to look for. And for actors, there's a few things that you really want to look for, and agents know what those things are. But a lot of it is like, what are your pain points? Do you want to control how your likeness is used? For example, do you want to know what you're going to look like on a poster or a one sheet or any sort of advertising? That's all dealt with at the contract stage. What are you getting paid? What's your credit? What kind of options do the producers want to acquire for your services in the future, and how does that impact your ability to get work? Those sorts of things are all contractual, of course, whether you're union or not. So if you've got a great agent, they will look for those things. Having a lawyer is awesome because they can fill in the little pieces that the agent may not catch, or they can add to what you're going to be negotiating in your contract, or they can find the language that may be kind of hidden in the standard terms that you don't like, whatever that is. I mean, everyone has different things that really bother them about their contractual obligations, and a lot of people, like I mentioned before, it's controlling their likeness, right? Producers may want to take really broad rights when it comes to how they can use your image or what kind of photos they can use. And for a lot of talent, how they look in artwork and photos it's very important. It impacts your career. So lawyers are great to have, but they are expensive. Lawyers generally bill hourly, and those rates can vary anywhere from $200 to $1,000 an hour. So if you can have an entertainment lawyer on your side, that's amazing. If you can't, but you've got a great agent, that's no reason to feel a huge amount of fear, because it can be really expensive to have somebody.
Oh, right. So, and if somebody did want to have an entertainment lawyer, because we're
Mhm.
all tuning in, because we all have that dream project that we want to just
Yeah.
get up and get it running, right? So we need guidance, and we need to consult with not only an agent but an entertainment lawyer on how to
Mm.
make it come true. So how can you help us make that come true, and also help us save money in the long run?
Yes. So if you're talking about being engaged as on-camera talent, that's an entirely different proposition than wanting to create your own project. And if you're creating your own project, having an entertainment lawyer is invaluable. And making sure that that lawyer is familiar with the film and television industry is super, super important, because things that I've seen happen in the past are, people will come to me with an amazing project, and they've gone online and they've hired a writer and they found a template online, and some of them are good and some of them are terrible, and they happen to have found one that's not great, and suddenly they don't own and control the rights that they need to produce their project. And as it gains momentum, the person on the other side sees an opportunity to really hold them over a barrel or negotiate something unfavorable. Or they don't don't enter into contracts. That happens all the time too. Two friends develop something, there's a handshake deal, things are great until they're not great, and the project gets stalled. And that happens a lot with newer producers, indie producers, who seek to kind of save money up front and think, well, we'll work it out later. Things are good until they're not good, and people can get very unreasonable when broadcasters or streamers come sniffing around a project because they see dollar signs, and I don't necessarily blame people for wanting to do that, but having a lawyer involved early will save you money in the long run. And there are plenty of great entertainment lawyers out there, and I would encourage anyone who's thinking about starting their project to call a couple and interview a couple and see who feels like a good fit, who feels friendly, who feels experienced, who responds quickly, and not most importantly, but very importantly, what they expect to charge, because people can give you estimates up front. And something I feel strongly about is you should never get a surprise bill for legal services. You can have those conversations up front.
So we're talking about pitching, and you were saying like make contact with them, schedule an interview so that you know in advance what they can do for you. So what can a content producer do in advance before they sit and pitch to you?
Before they pitch to a lawyer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Having your ducks in a row and understanding what your end goals are is super important. You can have the greatest ideas, but if you don't know where you want to see it end up, you're going to be kind of spinning your wheels with your lawyer. And as most lawyers bill hourly, if you're just talking through scenarios, the clock's ticking and you may not get where you need to get. So if you say, I have an idea for a reality series, I want to attach this person, I want to pitch it to this broadcaster, I know exactly what I need, and you come in with a plan, chances are you're going to get the most out of working with that lawyer.
Got it. But I'm sure there's other things that are involved. Like, I'm sure you need to have some type of storyboard, other documents, maybe an NDA, something, as a first-time producer, there's so much that we don't know that we need to do in order to protect ourselves and our ideas. So what
Yeah.
are some things that we need to know in advance? And I'm sure that's just by getting a consult with you, but what are
Yep.
some things that we need to know in advance so that we protect our ideas?
Absolutely. So you're obviously when you meet with your lawyer, they can tell you all these things. But a great idea, when you get your idea, you've got your idea. You want to make sure that you are protecting your rights. Copyright is really what you're looking at, and copyright arises on creation, and copyright is for all intents and purposes, the right to copy. You have something that's original to you. The copyright is your right to copy it, to exploit it, to make productions based on it, to reproduce it. It's all the rights that pertain to that kind of artistic expression. So to protect your rights, there's a couple of things that you can do. And the first thing is understanding what is protected and what isn't. Ideas aren't protected. So if you've got a great idea for a reality series, for example, and you start pitching it to people, you are taking the risk that person will say, hey, what a great idea. I'm going to take it and run with it. And there's not a lot you can do about that. So having something written down, having a written expression of what your concept is, will offer you protection. So you have an outline, a Bible, a treatment, a story, something that's like a physical representation or physical manifestation is protectable. Now, what do you do with that thing? If you share it with people, you run a small risk that someone could steal your idea, but you would have rights to it. So it's not as concerning as just having an idea without any sort of like fixed expression of it. But you can have people sign an NDA. NDAs are simple documents basically saying, I'm going to disclose to you my idea. You're agreeing to keep it in confidence and not to take it. NDAs are a great tool to have when you're working with other creatives. They don't often go very far when you're pitching. Most studios, production companies, networks won't sign an NDA. And the reason for that is not to be jerks, but because they get so many pitches and so many people approaching them. There's a likelihood that two things could be similar. So I could have an idea that's very similar to Natasha's idea, and they might like Natasha's better and they want to option it. And then I think, well, they stole my idea.
Mhm.
They didn't. And so that's why presenting an NDA to a studio or a broadcaster is usually not going to take you very far. But it's a great tool to have when you're working with co-creators and writers and financiers and people who you want to pitch to, who aren't going to ultimately be the commissioning party. The other thing you can do is register your copyright. And people do this in a number of ways. They can register it with the Canadian Copyright Office. You don't need a lawyer to do that. It's simple. Go online. Same thing with the US Copyright Office. People will do a kind of DIY, or what they call poor man's copyright. They put it in an envelope, send it to themselves via registered mail, and then don't open it. And what that does, and people do this all the time, it's not a bad tool. What it does is it shows that you had this concept as of a certain date. So if I then come out of the woodwork and say it's my idea,
Yeah.
if I can't prove I had it first, you've kind of preserved your rights. So those are kind of the main ways to protect your rights. And of course, to talk to a lawyer who can help make sure you're protected.
I've heard that story so many times about people sending themselves in registered mail their idea, or having that screenshot of them actually setting up a meeting via email and sending them the idea so that they have proof that they sent it. How do you get over the insult factor? Because some people, when you say, can you sign an NDA before I submit this idea to you, or before you take a look at it, and they get so offended because they're like, well, why would you
Yes.
think I would take your idea? But at the end of the day, business is business, right?
Yeah.
You're protecting your idea. So how do you get over that? What's a great way to kind of move?
Blame your lawyer.
But okay.
Seriously, do it. Say, I trust you, but my lawyer told me I had to get this signed by everyone that I talked about the idea with.
Got it.
And so blame someone else, or say, you know what, I'm discussing this with a third party and they said I had to get this signed. Because you never want to start off on that foot of, oh, this person doesn't trust me already and we haven't even worked together. And I will admit that I had a client once ask me to sign an NDA and I was so taken aback. And in retrospect, they were just trying to do the right thing and protect their ideas. But lawyers are bound by confidentiality. So, it's like talking to your doctor or your therapist. We're not going to steal your ideas or disclose things, but even in my position, and I draft these, I was taken aback.
Yeah. Lots of people are just tuning in right now. Some people have just joined in. So I'm just going to reintroduce you to the world.
Okay.
We're here with entertainment lawyer, Laurie Massini, who is giving us such great advice, especially if you are wanting to take the next step and produce your own content, create your own show. You're an actor who needs representation. Perhaps you're an influencer, an athlete, somebody who wants to start working behind the scenes and making that indie dream project come true. Entertainment lawyer, Laurie Massini is here to kind of guide us and help us navigate through this world that we want to so be a part of, called the entertainment industry. Casting Workbook is partnering with you, Laurie.
Yes.
With Producer Essentials. And it's such a great masterclass. And we're offering it here on Casting Workbook. If you don't know too much about it, it's a new video master series for aspiring producers who are looking to take the next step, what I just said. So bringing your creative project to life. Can you tell us a little bit about Producers Essentials and what you were hoping to get out of it?
Yes. So I have found that information is hard to come by when it comes to creating content, and the information you can find online, it's hard to filter the good information from the bad information. And there's tons of stuff out there that's not good. There's templates online that are terrible. There's information that's wrong. So what I wanted to do was create a resource that I wish I would have had when I started out, which is you're kind of thrown into this industry. The amount of information that you need to know is huge and it feels daunting. And I learned on the job. I had, like I said, I had a mentor named Kim Roberts, who's a phenomenal producer and entertainment lawyer. And he really coached me along the way. But a lot of things I had to figure out by myself. So I wanted to create a course that I wish I could have taken. And so what I set out to create is something that whether you're an aspiring entertainment lawyer, an aspiring business affairs professional, an aspiring producer, or someone who works in the entertainment industry, but not kind of on the ground, like accountants, bookkeepers. I wanted to create a kind of a 360 look at production from the conception of your idea to the end, marketing. And so I called people that I've worked with over the years and asked if they would each lend their expertise to this course so that people could get a full look at what it takes to make a production. And what I set out to do and think that the course does is, if you've never produced anything and you watch it from beginning to end and you take the handouts, you will be able to produce your content. You will be able to understand how to set up your company. I mean, work with a lawyer for that, but how to get the rights you need, what rights do you need, how do you avoid getting sued, how do you get E&O insurance? Because to me, the thing that people don't contemplate at the beginning of production, which lands people in hot water, is they don't understand at the outset that at the end of the day, if they want their production seen by anyone, they need to get what's called errors and omissions insurance. It's mandatory for broadcast. I've never seen a broadcaster not require it. And to get errors and omissions insurance, you have to pass a series of hurdles that relate to clearance and acquisition of rights. And I've seen some amazing productions that could not get errors and omissions insurance because they didn't follow the necessary steps. And at the end, if you have to try to unlock a cut and redo everything, it can tank your production. So we talk about that in every single step you need to take so that you can get your errors and omissions insurance and you can sell your production. And then we even have a senior counsel at Netflix who heads up marketing talk about how marketing works, how co-promotions work, how commercial tie-ins work, that sort of thing. So it's, oh, sorry, I just saw someone's comment. Not Arizona emissions insurance.
They wanted us to spell out the insurance.
Yes,
Everyone wants
errors.
to know what we're talking about.
Errors like ERRORS, errors and omissions. And what that is it's the policy that protects the content. Yes, short films do. It's a policy that protects the contents of your production. So it covers a bunch of things, but everything from copyright infringement to defamation or privacy issues. It's the contents of what you've produced.
This is so informative, and it's so beneficial for anybody who's waiting to take that next step to produce their own content. It's 16-hour course content. It's 12 monthly seminars with top PE instructors. You named there was one from Netflix. I went through it and I saw Hollywood Reporter as well, Reel One, Sony Pictures, all of these industry professionals and experts who are all your friends. I'm assuming. And they're all coming together to kind of help everybody get their dream job off the ground. Like, it sounds like there's just so much work and it sounds really overwhelming, but once you get through all these hurdles, how easy is it for you to create your own project?
It's not hard. I've done it. I have done, I did production stuff when I was new, and the hardest thing is getting the money.
Yeah.
Everything else, I mean, as with a lot of things in life. But we talk about that and how to pitch. For example, Sean Cavell, who is the genius behind Napoleon Dynamite, does a module on how to put together a pitch package, which I found amazing because I wish I would have known that to get private investment. But we also talk about how can you get soft money, how do you get tax credit money, that sort of thing. If you can get the budget, if you can get the money to make your project, everything else is not as hard as it may seem or as daunting as it seems up front. If you have a lawyer and you understand the process, it's just checking things off. It's getting the rights. It's finding the right people. So if you know what you're looking for and you can issue spot, and you have a good lawyer who helps you with the errors and omissions process, the clearance process, you're fine. Anyone can do it, honestly.
I can feel the energy and the excitement here on The Working Actor. There's a lot of people who are excited about what you're telling them. And I
Yeah.
just want to remind everyone that this is for educational purposes. This is by no means any legal advice. We're here to help everybody get their dream jobs on the go. And we're talking about that course that you're partnering up with Casting Workbook. It's called Producers Essentials. It'll be available on Casting Workbook, and it's $2.99. And the reason why I say that is we're talking about money and we're talking about how we get intimidated and overwhelmed. But $2.99 for this type of course is a bargain. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, it's great, right? I'm seeing a lot of exclamation marks, which is really amazing. Okay, we're going to get to some questions and some
Sure.
Q&As coming in because lots of people are asking questions. I have my question before I go through it all is, what's the difference between an entertainment lawyer and an agent, and do you need both?
That's a very good question. An agent is the person who helps you procure the gigs. They pitch you, they deal with the initial deal terms, they connect with casting. They're your advocate in terms of getting your foot in the door. And there are many, many savvy, great agents out there who understand the intricacies of a contract for services and can advise you through that. A lawyer doesn't normally pitch you. A lawyer is there to protect you. They are someone who will let you know what your rights are, will go through your contracts and tell you what you need to have taken out. And they will make sure that you're protected from liability and also protected in terms of what your obligations are to any kind of third party who's hiring you.
All right. Tanya Rogers comes in and says, I am a writer and actor, and I've written a feature screenplay, copyrighted 2021, registered with WGA. I'd like to play the lead and be EP. How difficult do you think it will be to find a production company willing to agree to these terms?
It depends on a number of factors. Not necessarily difficult, definitely not impossible. If the content itself is great, I mean, you could, first of all, you could produce it yourself. If you so desire. It's obviously a lot more work, but if you're looking to pitch it to a production company and you want to be attached in those capacities, you let that be known up front. And what usually happens is that companies will say, we'll agree to this subject to broadcaster and financier approval. At the end of the day, a production company has to deliver to a broadcaster or streamer or whoever what they want to see and what they feel has value. And so they're going to need to approve people in key roles, whether that's casting or, director, showrunner, whatever position. So your ability to be attached will likely be subject to a third party approval, but it's not something that a production company is going to say no to up front if you have the ability to do the job.
Now, what if you have a partner who's working with you on certain concepts? How do you protect yourself, and what do you need to do in order to have a good relationship with your partner and that you guys don't get into any, I guess, things that could spoil the relationship?
Yeah. Have a contract up front between you and your partner. And that can take a number of different forms. Some people will incorporate a company together. Some people will enter into a partnership agreement. People will enter into maybe like a joint venture agreement. But talk to a lawyer and have a contract up front. Have uncomfortable discussions up front. And the main thing to consider is what happens when things go wrong. Right. They may not. Hopefully they don't. But what happens if you can't work together anymore? Where do the rights go? And what kind of long-term attachment does the person who, if one person's going to take over in the event of a conflict, what kind of rights does the person left behind have? And that can be something like, oh, well, you'll get a credit, or you'll get some back end, or you'll get a fee when it goes to camera or something. But the main thing is to deal with what happens if things go really well? How do you share the money?
Right.
And what happens if things go really badly?
Full transparency, I've been working with a friend of mine who is
Yeah,
a great producer and she's a great content writer. And we've been working on some scripted and unscripted pitches. And the whole time, it's been very amicable where I'm like, once it gets picked up and, so a network picks it up, then we'll decide how we will divide it, but I want to host it, etc., and have like a producer's credit. And she's
yeah.
the executive producer, but I guess I shouldn't be doing that and waiting till it gets picked up, right? We should be writing all this down and breaking it out.
That's it's a great thing to do. I see this happen so often where one little thing that you don't agree on can cause a massive problem. And if you don't have a framework for figuring out what to do when you don't agree upfront, it can snowball. And these amazing projects get stalled because you don't have a framework for disagreements. So even if it's your best friend, your brother, your mom,
Right.
at least determine how you make decisions. And if you can't determine anything else, you can't decide who's going to be attached in what capacity or determine how you're going to make decisions. What happens if you can't agree?
Good answer. Okay. We have Ross who wants to know, does all of this work apply to novelists as well?
Novelists, not to the same degree. If you're writing a novel by yourself, you will want to protect your rights. It's always a good idea to register your work with the Copyright Office. Again, you can mail it to yourself. And I'd seen a couple things popping up about what about emailing it to yourself? What about this? What you want to do in mailing it to yourself, or what people are seeking to do, is show evidence that it existed as of a certain date. So it's not something like, you don't look up in the Copyright Act and it says mail something to yourself. It's just a creative solution that people have come up with to show that they had this thing as of a certain date. So for novelists, you want to protect yourself. You want to make sure that you have the rights you need. If your novel involves things that could get you in trouble down the road, like you're writing about real things, and it's not a completely fictitious work, you would want to talk to a lawyer before it's published, or your publisher often will advise on what to do in terms of making sure that you're not getting yourself into trouble, because obviously we can't write things that are or libelous about people and walk away. But yeah, for novelists, it's really more about preserving your rights.
All right. We are with Lori Massini, who's giving us a lot of advice. I'm taking notes down and I can feel everyone else taking notes down too. Molly has a question saying she's trying to begin filming her feature next summer and she's using crowdfunding. She says
Yeah.
that she's going to be able to raise enough money to make it. But what are your thoughts on crowdfunding for an indie film? And do you have any other good ways of raising money?
Well, first of all, Molly, that's awesome. Good for you. Crowdfunding, it's money. If people want to give you money to make your dream project, take the money. It's a great tool, and it doesn't need to be repaid. So that's great. The one thing to keep in mind with crowdfunding is that you're not going to be able to get tax credits. That's okay. Tax credits are there for producers who produce content in Canada. And if you're not familiar with the tax credit system, it's not a tax credit per se, it's more like a return. You hire Canadians, you follow the rules, and they give you money at the end. And people will borrow against that money to create their content. If you're collecting money that isn't repayable, you can't get them. But that's okay because you've got the money. And if you can make your project using crowdfunding, I don't see why you wouldn't.
All right. There's so many great questions coming in. I'm trying to get to all of them. Susan Moreau says, how applicable is this partnership agreement for independent ultra low budget films?
Okay, so hi, Susan. What you want to, the reason you want to have a partnership, and it may not be a partnership agreement, depending on your relationship with the people you're working with, the form of agreement can be different, or the form of your relationship can change. But you want to have an agreement because you want to make provision for what happens when things go well and what happens when things go bad. At the end of the day, what you're wanting to preserve is your rights. Again, it's largely what we're talking about is copyright, but if you're working with a partner on a low budget indie and your relationship deteriorates, what happens to the rights? What happens to your project? And that's really why you want to have a written contract in place at the outset.
Okay. We are with Lori Massini, and she's giving us a lot of great advice on how to get your indie project off and running. And obviously, that's the goal, right? Everybody wants to do that. Lori, you've worked with a lot of films and independent productions here in Canada. You have your own producers essentials. You're partnering with Casting Workbook on your own masterclass as well. Where can creators find private investors or producers, or any advice on how to approach them?
So this is a very big hurdle that people face in production, is finding the money and finding the people to partner with. In terms of finding producers to work with, it's a tough question to answer because there's so many phenomenal production companies out there, and a lot of them will not accept pitches or will not allow people to kind of send in unsolicited pitches for their projects. So it can be really hard to find someone to pitch your project to. I would say the best way to do that is to start to make relationships. Go to the events, go to meet people, go to the festivals, go to the screenings, go to, there's tons of like Crazy Eights, there's tons of groups of people out there who are supporting each other. There's Facebook groups. Finding people to build personal relationships with is a great way to get in with those producers, because just cold calling them often isn't going to get you very far. In terms of finding private investments, there are very complicated securities laws around soliciting money. And so without getting into that, usually when you're first starting out, friends and family are your best sources of investment. And there's ways to preserve their rights, to make sure that they are getting as much protection to get repaid as they can. And obviously your lawyer can help draft those contracts for you, but that's usually the best place to start.
Okay. What would you say? I mean, you've heard those stories of people who have borrowed money from friends to get their dream project on the go, and then it's happened. And did they ever sign a contract with those people saying that they would repay them, or is it just something that was done in good faith?
I would say it changes, it varies a lot, but the best thing you can do is have a contract with them. And there's ways to structure investment to make sure that, from a tax credit perspective, you can still qualify. There's ways to structure it to make sure that your friend or your investor has the very best chance of getting repaid. Any investment is risky, of course. Investing in film is risky, or TV. But there are ways to structure your agreements to make sure that they stand the best chance of getting repaid, or that they have a stake, that they get profits, that they may be credited as an EP, for example. But there should always be contracts. Without them, especially without having them drafted by a lawyer who's experienced in the area, you can run into a lot of issues and can potentially end up in litigation that you don't obviously want to be in.
What about for actors who are ununionized and they want to produce their own work? This is coming in from Grace Faria, who says, how do I ensure that I'm not breaking any union rules? Oh,
okay. Well, if we're talking locally or in Canada, and you're referring to UBCP or ACTRA, if you want to produce a production non-union, then you have to cast non-union actors. If you want to cast union actors, then you have to contact UBCP, and they have different programs available for producers who are working on different budgets. So you're not going to necessarily be paying huge sums of money, paying unions minimums for a low budget indie production. ACTRA and UBCP are both, as many of you know, great organizations that understand how production works, especially indie production, and will work with indie producers to make sure that they can get their project made.
I have a friend of mine who wants to produce a short based on someone's real life.
Yes.
What do they have to do in order to legally make it happen so that they don't kind of like get surprised at the end, you know, with getting sued for telling a story of someone else that doesn't belong to them? So what are some legal steps that they need to take?
Yes, this comes up a lot. Obviously, people like to tell true stories. I would say, first of all, talk to a lawyer. But speaking generally, if you want to do a production based on someone's life, you need permission to do that. There are exceptions, and lawyers can help with that. But if, let's say, I wanted to do a movie based on your life, Natasha, I would have to go to you and get your permission. And there's an agreement called a life rights agreement that you would get signed, and each one differs. Sometimes people will say, yeah, do whatever you want. And sometimes people will say, okay, you can make one film. I get certain consultation rights, and the contract will flow based on what that person wants. Now, if I'm doing a movie based on Natasha, Natasha doesn't live in a vacuum. So there are people around her who I would also want to portray. Getting Natasha's permission doesn't give me permission to show Natasha's friends and family. So if I'm taking those steps, I also need to get the people close to Natasha to sign off. I have seen producers be very motivated by true stories. They don't think they can get the rights, so they create a thinly veiled version of that person's story and call them something else and maybe change some key things. Again, this is something to discuss with a lawyer. A thinly veiled copy is usually not going to be okay. Taking inspiration from somebody and changing it sufficiently can be okay. So there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to telling true stories. There's also the issue of who has these rights or this reasonable expectation that their story is not going to be told. There are certain people in the public eye who you're not going to need permission from. There are certain people who are deceased who, depending on where they passed away, you may not need permission from their estate. So I would say, if you want to tell a true story, get an opinion from a lawyer about what you need to do and who needs to be cleared.
So is that where the loosely based on, every time you watch a movie and it says this story was loosely based on so-and-so,
Yes.
so they protect themselves? Got
Yeah.
it. Got
Yeah,
it.
and or on Law and Order, for example, they always have that big disclaimer. This isn't based on real life events, and you're like, but this sounds very familiar.
Yes.
There are steps that people will take to try to be inspired by true stories.
That's right. Well, I'm just saying that if you were to create a story about my life, it would be a musical dramedy horror film.
That sounds perfect.
There you go. It would be great. Academy Award winning film. Okay. We're going to get to some more questions. What are some misconceptions? You've been in this business for a long time. So what are some misconceptions that you deal with on a daily basis when people come to you and you're like, no, that's not what I do? Like, what is your job? And let's set the record straight here.
Sure. I would say the biggest misconception is that I will take projects to clients or to studios and pitch them or give them a little boost up. There may be lawyers that do that, but generally that sort of thing is done by an agent, and most lawyers won't cross that line. The other thing is that it probably won't do you any good, and this is something that I think especially people looking to get their project off the ground should recognize, is that as a lawyer, if you want me to submit your project, and lawyers will usually charge for that, it may not help you in any way. Chances are it won't, because anyone can pay a lawyer to submit a project to a production company, and that doesn't have any bearing on the quality of the project. And the production company may say, this is essentially an unsolicited submission, and having that entertainment lawyer backing you is maybe not going to help you. If you're looking to submit your project, your better source for that is your agent and not an entertainment lawyer. So that's probably the biggest misconception, or that I am around to advise people in a business capacity. Lawyers obviously advise clients on the law. We are very familiar with the industry, so we know what's standard and we can speak to what's reasonable and standard, but we aren't business advisors. So that's the other kind of misconception.
Oh, and so when do you think would be an opportunity in your career as an actor or as a producer that you definitely do need a lawyer? Because I'm sure we all have ideas, but some of us are just starting out in the industry, right? So if you're an actor, you don't necessarily need an entertainment lawyer, but depending on the status of the actor you are, you know, Hollywood, every actor has an entertainment lawyer and
Yes.
agent and all that. So at what point do you know, yeah, it's time for me to get an entertainment lawyer?
It's, you know what, it's different for everybody, and everyone's comfort level is different. But I will say, chances are, if you have worked on any productions, which I'm assuming almost everyone has, or everyone has, you get there and you're presented with paperwork. And it may just be an Appendix E on a UBCP shoot, or it may be a rider, or it may be a bunch of different documents in a start pack. You have the right to have a lawyer look those over and to let you know what they say and to advise you of your rights. What I find is a lot of actors who are being paid scale or day players are generally okay with signing kind of the standard form start packs. The one time, or the point where I would say absolutely 100% get a lawyer is if you're negotiating something that has ongoing obligations, or if you're being paid in excessive scale. If you're a lead in a production, the kind of contract that you're going to sign is probably going to be different than if you're a day player. And if you're signing a long form contract that has things that go outside of kind of the standard terms in a UBCP deal, that's a good time to talk to a lawyer. Or if you're signing a deal that has options or future obligations, that's another great time to talk to a lawyer. And agents are also very good resources to know when legal advice would be very helpful.
That's great advice. No word of a lie. I was interviewing a celebrity who I will remain nameless right now, but just before I started the interview, he took out his checkbook and he wrote 5 checks and tore them out. And he's like, my agent, my lawyer, my manager, he's like, everybody is taking a percentage of what I make. And he was dead serious, right? But I guess the more money you make, the more fees you have to keep,
people are grabbing it. Yeah.
you're successful. What if you don't have obviously the money to hire or afford a lawyer? Are there any resources that are available out there that we can inform ourselves with, like the masterclass that we're offering here?
Yeah. I think that there is an artist legal outreach program. I should know this, and I don't have all the information on it, but I would say Google entertainment law resources or artists legal resources in whatever city you're in. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Because there are resources, there are people who donate their time, and we'll talk to people who have a question about a contract or whatever it is. And every kind of city will have something. So I would say Google that. The other thing that you can do is look up local entertainment lawyers and shoot them an email and say, do you offer an initial complimentary consultation? So you know what you're paying for. And then give them a call and say, here's what I'm working with. Is this something A, that you can help me with, and B, that you're able to provide a cost estimate on? It may not be as expensive as you think up front, or it may be a bigger issue and it's going to cost a lot more, but it's very important. So have those calls with the lawyers. Never feel bad about talking to multiple people. to find the fit that's right for you and to find someone who can offer what you need for a price that you can afford.
Yeah, because I'm sure there is someone out there, right, who will have a good price for you. But what
Yeah.
is there such thing? Laura has a question. Laura Meadows
Okay.
says, "Are there entertainment lawyers that would do work pro bono, even for a first meeting?"
Yes.
Yes.
You have that conversation up front. Um, some will, some won't. But usually most lawyers will gladly have an initial consultation that they don't charge for. And they can at least issue spot for you at that point. Lawyers won't give specific legal advice without being retained. And that's for a very good reason, which is not that they're mean, but that we have professional insurance that covers us when we've been formally retained. And so we want to protect ourselves and follow the rules that lawyers need to follow. But usually at an initial consultation, you can get an understanding of what you need to do. And there may be lawyers who are willing to work pro bono, depending on what your project is. So I think it's worth having those conversations
We were
and not being intimidated. So many people are intimidated to call lawyers. Most of us are really nice and are happy to talk and want to help people. And if we can, and we can do it within your budget, we will.
Yeah. We were talking about producers, we're talking about novelists and actors. We didn't really touch very much on the influencers or, the TV personalities and
Yeah.
athletes where we need an entertainment lawyer.
Yes.
What's the main reason why? Obviously, to negotiate our contract and that we get our worth. Exactly.
100%. To negotiate your contracts, it's the biggest thing. If you're a content creator and you have a brand that wants to come on and pay you to create Instagram stories, that's awesome. But what if the contract says that they can lift stills or take stills from it and use that in their marketing, and suddenly you're the face of a brand and you've never given them permission? I've seen this happen.
Yes.
And you're all over the place, and then third parties are using it because you've assigned the rights for them to grant those rights to third parties. You want to make sure that you're getting you're getting the payment that you want on the terms that you want, but also what kind of rights do you have going forward, and what kind of rights are they taking from you going forward?
That's so important that you said that. There's been many cases, right, where you've collaborated with a brand on one season, and then a year later, they're still using that still of you to endorse their product. And you're like, well, I didn't agree to 5 or 6 years of you using this photo. So that's perfect. That's exactly why we need an entertainment lawyer so they can protect our
Oh,
rights, right?
models too. Models often will sign contracts, and then in the fine print it says, we can use you in print ads for whatever we want. We can license third parties to use you in print ads. And then you're not getting paid for the value of your contribution.
Yeah. So many people are asking a couple of questions that we've
Yeah.
already answered. I just want to remind everybody that Casting Workbook is partnering with Producer Essentials, which is Lori. It's going to be a new video master series for aspiring producers who are looking to take the next step. What are you hoping that people who are tuning in right now will gain from this masterclass that you're offering with Casting Workbook?
Honestly, there's two things. I'm hoping people will gain the confidence to know that they can do it. It's not undoable. It's not impossible. You may not be producing a $50 million feature film, but you can produce your own content. You can do a web series. You can get your project to where it needs to be, and you can bring it to life. That's the first thing. And the second thing I'm hoping is to create a bit more of a community of people who want to create content in this indie space, where people have resources, they can talk to each other, they can ask questions. Part of what we're going to be doing is bringing industry experts in for live Q&As. So you can have access to people and ask them your questions and have that community and foster this kind of sense of belonging, that this isn't an exclusive thing that you can't be part of. Everyone can create their own production and have a seat at this table.
Yeah, and there's so many great industry professionals that are part of that masterclass. And we were talking about lawyers' fees and how about people doing it pro bono for for I think it's 200 and something dollars, you're
Yeah.
getting all these experts and all this advice for 16 hours, 12 monthly seminars. That's amazing. Lori, it's been so great talking with you. I'm going to get to
Wow, that
one
went so
more
fast.
question. I know it went by so fast, but you're a plethora of information, right? So whenever you're having a great time and you're learning so much, that class always goes by so fast. We talked about the resources. We're going to get to one more. Ray wants to know, are actors using your services more now as entertainment has broadened? So I guess the question is, yeah, have you found that actors are using your service a lot more since the entertainment industry has changed?
Yes, definitely. I don't do a lot of work with actors. I primarily work with producers or studios, and so if I were to work with actors, that could put me in a conflict of interest. Obviously, I can't work for both sides. But there are more opportunities. There's more production, as you guys know. Streamers are putting out tons of amazing content. More people are getting more opportunities. So more actors are using entertainment lawyers, which I always think is great. Protecting yourself is always a great thing. A lot of American lawyers really kind of focus on the acting or the on-camera talent space more so than the Canadian side. But more actors are working with lawyers, and I think that's a great thing. And more actors are taking their shot at producing their own content, which is amazing to see. And in that capacity, I'm doing more work with them, yes.
That's amazing. Did you ever want to act? I know you
No,
used to dance, right?
I was a dancer. No one would ever want to see me attempt to act, but I love creating the content, and I admire the resilience of actors who have a much thicker skin than I could ever have. And I don't think I could ever go on an audition. It would be terrifying. And I would say that if you're an actor who has the courage to go to auditions and face that kind of rejection, then producing your own content is way less scary.
Good advice. And on that note, we're going to leave it at that, right? We're gonna leave it at if you want to re-watch this, it's going to be back up on Casting Workbook. Trevor Fox is going to be putting it all together and making it look great. You were fantastic, Lori. And if
Oh,
you want
thank
to
you.
hear more from Lori, you can sign up for our Casting Workbook and Producers Essentials, which will have Lori and all of those great industry experts who are going to be there to talk to you. I want to thank Emily Buchanan, who's always our amazing producer behind the scenes. And I want to thank everybody for tuning into the Casting Workbook and the Working Actor every week. It was so great to have you back on again. And we will see you next week with another awesome guest. But for now, thank you so much, Lori.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It was so great to have you. And I look forward to having you on again. Have a great
Sounds
weekend.
good. Okay, you too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.